Okay, welcome. This is Network Administration. I'm Emmett Gray. This is going to be just a short introduction to the course, sort of like a video version of the syllabus. So, let's begin. So, welcome. I'm going to try to make this kind of interesting and informative. Hopefully, that'll work. This provides you everything you need to know how to install, maintain, and administer Windows servers. Basically, if you decide I'm going to be a Windows administrator, I'm going to be a server administrator, a network administrator, that's what this course is all about. And it's kind of weird because in addition to having the hard skills about how do you create a domain and how do you add a machine to a domain, those are, technical skills. We also talk an awful lot about philosophy because there's a soft component to this. So two sections, actually two books, a philosophical book and a technical book. And it is fairly in depth. I mean, not necessarily on the philosophical side, but on the technical side, there's an awful lot of topics. But I try to stress concepts and philosophies rather than have you, memorize a bunch of stuff because that's never fun. Okay, so about this class, this is an online class with asynchronous video lectures. And some people, I've had people come in and say, oh, well, I didn't know things were due. I thought this was self-paced. It's like, no, this is real. The prerequisites, data communications and infrastructure course. Okay, there are two books, the philosophy book, and since the titles, I refer to the titles over and over again, I abbreviate them. So instead of Practice of System and Network Administration, I call this PSNA. And then this book, with the Windows Server Administration Fundamentals, I call it WSAF. So in lecture, you're going to see lots of talk about these, what chapter and what book we're in. And I will tell you that 20% of the material probably comes from me and not in either one of those books. Okay, so online videos. Obviously, the videos are broken up into winks and released every Monday, typically by afternoon, by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the new batch of videos are released. There's typically 3 chapters, 2 in the philosophy book and 1 in the technical book, released every single week. And unfortunately, that's a lot. Okay, if you were to add them all up, it's about 24 hours of videos. And you're going, oh my God, 24 hours of videos. Ah! On the other hand, let's do the math. Let's say this was a 16-week face-to-face course. We met twice a week for an hour and 15 minutes. That's 40 hours of listening to me drone on. So 24, you're actually working out like a bandit there. Okay? A little better than half. So the videos are broken up into 15-minute chunks just because, you have a life and you can't spend 1.5 hours in one setting. That's just not a practical thing. I mean, you have other, competition for your attention. And, you could use, if you don't already know this, you could use YouTube and a little gear to speed up the things and to cut some of the time down. Okay, so asynchronous content, video, obviously the videos are recorded in advance, so you can't like raise your hand and go, wait, I have a question. But you can't email me something, a Canvas email saying, hey, I just finished lecture number 4 and I have no idea what the heck you were talking about. Could you go over this again? That's fine. You can even ask me specific things. You might be working on an assignment and have to say, wait a minute, I'm completely lost. Am I even in the right direction? That kind of stuff. And if you need to have a face-to-face meeting, we could probably do a virtual face-to-face or a physical one. I mean, we can meet at the university. Okay, so this is what's called a lecture-heavy class, which means the quiz and assignments are due upon what is said and done in lecture. Very little, well, that's a poor choice of words. The assignments and quizzes are not based upon the books, okay? They're based upon the lectures, all right? So if this was a face-to-face class, you'd have to show up. You have to pay attention, right? Take notes. That's exactly what I'm asking you to do here. Okay, very few PowerPoint slides, and I use my lecture notes. So I have a script that I follow that basically makes sure that while I'm doing the videos that I don't miss anything. I'm kind of following the outline in the books. And so that's how I do things. I don't use the PowerPoint slides from the publisher or any of those things. So this is what's called an active class. I mean, we're not just going to say, well, here's how you promote a server to be a domain controller. No, you're going to do it, okay? It's going to be a do course, not a watch course. You're going to be doing stuff, very much an active course. You're expected to learn how to do something and then turn right around and do it. Not memorizing stuff. That's not what we're after here. Okay, so requirements. All interactions are through Canvas. Is an online course, so all the assignments and quizzes and everything. You do need access to a computer. Now, I wish I could say, oh, you can use any computer you want. No. This is one of those times where there's not really an alternative. You really, really going to need an honest to God real machine, at least Windows 10, with a lot of RAM. 8 gig of RAM is probably going to be the bare bones minimum. You're going to need a traditional architecture, either an Intel or AMD 64-bit processor, not one of the new Qualcomms, not an Apple Mac, none of that stuff. You're probably going to need a real honest to God Windows machine to be able to do this. I'm going to be using a Windows machine, and I'm going to be installing an older version of Server, an older version of Windows 10. And I want you to be doing the exact same thing with the exact same steps with the exact same network. So, man, going off on your own is probably not a good idea. The university does have machines that you can use. They also have a few that you can check out, but that doesn't work necessarily as well as you might think because you're going to be installing stuff and you won't have administrator rights. You also need a reliable internet connection. I mean, if you live out in the boonies where you have power outages or internet drop-offs from time to time, that might be bad, particularly if you're in the middle of taking a quiz. Okay, I'm sorry, you are going to need a Windows-based machine. Okay, I go ahead and say, yeah, there's several alternatives, but quite frankly, no. I mean, I've had people who tried to do that and they had to just go borrow a machine. It's just not practical to do this any other way. So software. Typically, what we're going to do is we're going to install Oracle VirtualBox, and then we're going to install Windows Server 2022, which is not the latest, and Windows 10, which is not the latest. I'm doing this on purpose. Okay, it's not like, oh wait, his slides are old. No, there's very specific reasons. Okay. And do not install these things in advance because we're going to be following some very specific things I want you to do. Okay. We're going to have a video call it, installing Windows Server. And then later on, here's one for installing Windows 10 as a client. Yeah. Okay. So everything's going to be done in a virtual environment and virtual network. So we're going to connect machines together inside this invisible virtual network inside your machine. You are going to need to be able to create Microsoft Word documents because a lot of the assignments are going to be like screenshots. Give me a screenshot of this and this and this. Show me the steps you did to add this machine to the domain, that kind of stuff. And I'd highly recommend that you just have a Windows-based PC. So you're going to need an account called on Azure for Students. This will allow you to go get the Windows Server and Windows 10 media, the ISO files, okay, and activation keys, okay, but do not go on your own. Get exactly what I've got shown, okay? Now, again, we're going to go over this again, so don't install these things in advance necessarily. What I'm saying is you're going to need to download. If you want to download them, fine, go right ahead. Don't install anything yet, okay? So you need to request an account through Azure for Students that allow you to download these things. It's usually pretty easy to do. There's a set of instructions and supplemental materials if you've never done that before. Okay, expectations. You're going to learn an awful lot about the philosophy side of network administration. Okay, and you're going to learn a lot of the things like on the Microsoft certification test subjects. All the things about promoting machine or adding machine. That kind of stuff. And you're going to have to apply your stuff by creating an Active Directory domain-based network. You will not need to be a computer expert, although it might help. And it's not really my task to turn you into a computer expert. And we're not going to be doing any programming. Okay, so in the PSNA book, there's a gazillion chapters. We're going to chapter 28. Now, some of these chapters are like 4 or 5 pages long, so don't freak out. They go pretty quick. And then 12 chapters in the technical book. Okay. So I show this at the beginning of every class. It's basically Bloom's taxonomy of learning. And the purpose is to let you know exactly where I am with regard to the way we teach in college. In grade school, it was the blue area, duplicate, list, memorize, repeat, state, memorizing state capitals, that kind of stuff. We're in college now. I want you to do something. I want you to execute, implement, solve, use, demonstrate, interpret, right? It's not about just soaking in knowledge. I want you to be able to do it. So do is in the green. Differentiate, organize, relate, compare, contrast. So we're in the green, baby. That's where we need to be. Okay, so just to drive home this point, there's a what versus why. So a what kind of question is, what's the capital of South Dakota? Quite frankly, the answer in my way of thinking is, I don't know. I'll look it up. I mean, right? And you might think, oh, what's a crazy way of thinking? No, I mean, in the real world, if you go to some corporate office and there's, a system administrator, they're going to have cheat sheets on the wall in their cube explaining how to do things so they don't have to memorize stuff. Okay, that's real life. So if it's done in real life, it's okay here too. So what kind of question? You're never going to get a what's the definition of this term kind of question. If I was a student, I'd take the term, throw it in Google, and whatever garbage Google spit out, I'd copy and paste it and go to the next question. That's what I would do. So that's not learning at all. And so, AI and, Google, okay. But what's more important is, okay, there's two ways to do this. So you need to learn why you're doing this and how to pick the scenario that matches. So what is not all that important, but why you're doing something. If you're following the set of instructions and all you're doing is just, wiping the drool from your chin occasionally and just doing what it says to do, you haven't learned anything. You may have accomplished the goal, but you haven't learned anything. Okay? But if you're asking yourself, why on earth am I doing this step? What does this thing do? Now you're learning. Okay. All right, so course requirements, there's two major exams, a midterm and a final. The final is not comprehensive. It's just the second half. There's going to be a review session before the quiz, okay, going over all the topics that might appear. 6 quizzes. Usually takes about 30 minutes. 6 assignments. So you're going to submit a Word document with screenshots. A term project, which is basically everything. Building an active directory domain and everything. And then a participation score. And the participation is composed of a syllabus exam, which we haven't talked about yet, plus journals, which we haven't talked about yet, but just hang on. So here's how it works. There's 2 exams at 10 points apiece. 6 quizzes, 6 assignments, 1 term project, a whopping 15%. That's 1.5 letter grades, man. You can't blow that off. And then participation is 5. So here's what the course looks like. I have the class activity and the hands-on activities. What's due, the real takeaway behind this is it's every week there's going to be a quiz or an assignment, quiz or assignment, quiz or assignment, all the way down through. Typically 2 things due, quiz or assignment plus a journal, except for the first week because I have that extra readiness thing thrown in. And then here's some little notes. Second week is when we're going to install the server. And in the 6th week, that's when we're going to install Windows 10. There's lots of stuff in here. Okay. So workload. How much you expect? I'm expecting probably about an hour outside of the video lectures. And there's tons of information and supplemental materials and in lecture notes. Fast paced. About 2 chapters in the PNSA book and 1 in the WSAF book with lots of stuff to cover. A quiz and assignment plus a journal is due every Sunday at 11:59 p.m., midnight essentially. Okay, here's the weekly routine. So you turn something in on Sunday, a quiz or assignment plus a journal. And then Monday, I have a Monday class, so it may be like Monday afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock, is when I'm going to grade all your stuff and then release the new batch of videos. But I'm going to release the previous week's notes. So even though I am giving you my lecture notes, I'm not giving them to you in advance. You have to wait a week to get those. Okay, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark. So I mentioned that we break these things up into chunks. So I'll see you again in the next part.